Hey YouTube, this is David, the Georgia photographer, and today what I want to talk about is the Fuji XT3 and my love affair with this camera. Just to be honest with you, I'm starting to really like this XT3 experience as a whole. You might even call this a pseudo opinion review. I've really grown to enjoy using this camera. The more I use it, the better I like it. It's not because I'm getting more familiar with it. It's because I'm getting spoiled, you might say, to the features that it brings to the table that my DSLR doesn't have. It is a crop sensor camera. People complain and they rail on it and how Fuji needs to get into full frame and all that jazz. For the photography I do, this crop sensor seems to be working really well. I'm not really all that disappointed in it. The Nikon D810 I have does have better low light performance from what I can tell. I don't super need it, okay? I'm not a working professional photographer, so my hobby photography allows me the latitude to not really worry that much about the low light performance that my D810 has. As of late, I have basically learned that you don't have to have every one of those little tick boxes checked off to get good photos. This camera, now I will admit, without the battery grip, it would be awfully small. I could still use it, but I really like what the battery grip brings to the table. So my opinion of this camera includes the use of the battery grip, which makes the form factor of the camera significantly larger. It adds about 1.5 inches on the bottom, and the grip depth is very deep, so you know it gives it a good solid grip. I have a large hand, so without the battery grip, you know, and it adds some here, that really brings the camera to where I feel it should be. Plus the fact that it brings 2 extra batteries to the table really helps, because it's got, you know, those are fairly small batteries, and there's a lot of power consuming features on this camera, so you really need the 3 batteries at a time that the battery grip adds, because you got 1 in the camera and 2 in the grip, and it will read them and it will draw off of the grip batteries before it draws off the internal battery. Another thing I like about the XT3, you can charge the batteries while they're in the camera. All 3 batteries, you USB-C charge the internal battery. It does not bleed over to the grip, so you can't charge the grip with the USB-C port. It's kind of odd, but apparently there's a diode in there to prevent current flow into the grip from the camera body. Anyway, there's a charger that comes with the battery grip that will charge the battery grip batteries externally without removing them. There's a little port under this rubber cover. I could dig at it and show you, but trust me, there's a charge port here. Another thing I like about it is the retro styling. I really like the retro styling of this camera. To me, a camera, I'm a guy, what am I trying to say here? I'm a tech guy, and I like to fidget with the tools. I really like to mess with the camera itself. I don't like an automatic camera, if that makes sense. Set it and forget it, to me, takes some of the fun away. I like to mess with it, so I like the fact that it has knobs for ISO and shutter speed, and there's an actual aperture ring. Of course, it's an electronic aperture ring. It's fly-by-wire aperture. It does give you aperture control, albeit electronically, but it's there. Teresa's over here playing with the sliding glass door, and it's in frame, and she knows it, and she's on camera, and she knows it too. Another thing I like about the XT3 in particular, and it might be part of the Fuji ecosystem, is their lenses are really well made. I really do enjoy using the kit lens that come with the camera. Even though it's a variable aperture lens, it takes phenomenal photographs. It's like they didn't bother to neuter the lens because it was the kit lens. They just made it small form factor to make it nice and compact, so you sacrifice that constant aperture. You know, it loses a stop when you rack it out. When you rack it out to 70mm, or 55, whatever. When you rack it out, it goes to f4 from f2.8. It doesn't sacrifice image quality. The images are still phenomenal. Another thing I like about this camera is the whole what you see is what you get. Let's see here. All right. You can tell immediately. Let's see if I get it up close enough. You can tell what your exposure is going to look like. There's a built-in histogram that shows me that I'm underexposed, overexposed, what have you. When I look through the electronic viewfinder, I can see this exact scene even in bright sun. Where that really comes in is when I'm reviewing images. In the midday sun, the displays on the back of all of my Nikon DSLRs are virtually unusable. I'm covering it with my coat. I'm trying to hide it with my hand to see what it looks like. It's just a terrible experience. Yeah, I know, you should know your exposure, and I do follow my exposure meter in the camera to make sure it's pretty close. I might be a third of a stop one way or the other most of the time, but to keep my exposures where I don't have to review them, I watch the meter in the camera. You can see it in the viewfinder, and you'll know if you're under or over when you take the shot. You can see it, but it lets me get a good composition, and you get a visual representation. I have yet to do flash photography with this camera. That's something I do like with my DSLRs, especially my D810, is the high-speed sync functionality. It will sync to 1/8000th of a second in high-speed sync. I mean, that's fast. If you can high-speed sync to 1/8000th, you're set. So yeah, you do have to use high quality flash to get that functionality, but it works. But what I'm starting to really like about these Fuji cameras, or the mirrorless cameras in general, I like the Sony A7 II that I had until this IBIS started giving trouble. The whole being able to adapt lenses from DSLRs to them because of the film plane and all that jazz, you know, the camera being thinner allows you to run adapters. I like being able to run my Nikkor glass. I like running vintage lenses. They're cool. They have character, and it brings that character to your photos. Sometimes the character's good, sometimes it's bad. It allows me to use my Nikkor lenses. I do have to manual focus them, but I don't mind that so much. Another thing I really like about this camera is the face and eye detect autofocus with the Fuji lenses. It works so well, and supposedly it's about to get a big boost with a firmware update. Another thing I like about Fuji is they figure out ways to make things better in software and just give you the software. Nikon will come out with a firmware update when they find a glaring flaw in the operation of the camera that they can fix with software. And you'll get one of those a year, maybe. So you don't get features added through firmware with Nikons that you get with Fuji. I mean, they're about to give us a big improvement in eye detect autofocus. I'm all about some eye detect autofocus. That crap works so well. It's impressive. Now, there's a few things I don't like about this camera. There are not many, but there are a few. One is JPEG color rendition. I have defaulted to using, it's one of the film colors. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, I use classic chrome film simulation for my JPEGs because the camera it mutes the greens a little. It's a little odd. But if I run classic chrome, that's the one I like the best. It gives me a nice, strong color palette. It's like it upgrades the colors or something in the camera, but it will take that film video simulation and apply it to your JPEGs. Now, when you're shooting RAW, the RAW files are RAW files. So it's taking the data straight, and then you adjust it in Lightroom. It has a good app on the phone, but it stays connected really much better than the Sony one did. And I can actually send the JPEG straight from the camera to my phone for like sharing on Instagram or whatever. I really like doing that. I like the colors that chrome simulation gives me, so I just use those JPEGs when I send them over to the camera, and I shoot JPEG plus RAW. That way when I get back home I can save the RAW files, and if I want to edit them I can. If I don't, I have them. Another thing that I don't like about this camera, honestly, is the on-off switch. I don't know how many times I've got it out of my camera bag and it be on. It's a simple throw switch. It's in a good spot, but it's too easy to manipulate, and I'll bump it and I'll cut the camera on. I rarely turn it off, invariably I end up turning it on, putting it in the camera bag. I leave the strap on it a lot of times. I have a Black Rapid strap that screws into the tripod mount, and I'll leave it on the camera and I'll just kind of fold it up and tuck it in under the lens, and it'll sometimes get up here and it'll bump the power switch and it'll turn the camera on in the camera bag. That's something that I would like to see done slightly different. It is a good switch and it works, but yeah, it's real easy to manipulate. You rub it against something and it'll cut the camera on, see? And it just doesn't take much to cut it on off. Other than that, I wish this flipped this way. I mean, I get why they did this. It's so you can hold it down low and you shoot vertical frames from down low. I understand the premise behind flipping it this way, but I do wish it rotated out to the front. I would use it for a vlogging camera. That's why I got the GoPro here, was because I just don't like using a regular camera to do vlogs. I struggled around with it with the Sony. Honestly, it just wasn't fun. If I was going to recommend someone get a mirrorless camera, I think when the XT3 comes out, which is basically this camera with IBIS in it, I think that will be the ultimate mirrorless camera for a while to come. Rain's picking up. This is what you shoot on rainy days. But for me, this is a great camera. I really like the XT3. After having it for several months now, I can easily say that this is I recommend this. You know, there's other cameras I've handled and they work, but like Sony's menu system is just terrible. This menu system actually makes a lot of sense. There's a few items that are hidden in sub menus that don't really equate to me, like how you format the cards. You have to go down into I think it's called user functions or something like that. But once you find it, you found it. And then I've remapped some of the buttons. I've got like the timer mode is remapped to this function button on the front, so I can engage timer mode by just clicking that, selecting 2 or 10 seconds. And then I've got back button focus assigned to this one, and focus magnification assigned to this one, so that when I'm shooting manual focus lenses, I can hit that button, zoom in, make sure I'm on focus on what I want to be, you know, and then when you press the shutter, it turns that off and you go back to what the framing looks like. So it gives me an easy way to make sure my focus is like I want. Other than that, I haven't remapped any of the other buttons. The rest of them, I really don't know what they do. Most of the time I have to hunt. The white balance I've found pretty well. A few of the others that I use, but for the most part, I use the knobs and the aperture ring, and I just shoot photos with it. I just enjoy using it. That's my ramblings about the XT3. And if you like my video, give it a thumbs up. If you like my channel, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, it's really difficult, I've noticed. I'm up to almost 800 as of this video. I think it's 796 or something was what I checked this morning. It's been a really slow go. It's just, I thought it would happen faster for some reason. I guess I got lured into Peter McKinnon syndrome. But I'm having fun making videos anyway. So I'm gonna get out and go shoot some pictures in the rain today, and we'll see what we can turn up with this. That's all I got. This is David, the Georgia photographer, and I'll talk to y'all later. Y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.